The National Hockey League is one of the most exciting sports leagues in the world, and its players are known worldwide. To make the league more popular and bring in more money, the NHL has strict rules about behavior that could hurt the image of hockey. The league wants to protect its reputation as a tough but fair sport that fans can enjoy. However, there have been times when NHL players didn't follow the rules, and they are the topic of this video, as we're going to reveal the top 10 longest suspensions in NHL history. From dangerous hits to shocking violence, these are the moments that crossed the line and earned players the harshest punishments the league has ever handed out. Before we dive into these shocking suspensions, make sure to hit subscribe for more hockey history. Let's start with some shorter bans that still cost players big time. Minor suspensions in the NHL range from 10 to 15 games for dangerous plays. The league has become much stricter over time, cracking down on hits that used to only get small fines or 1 to 2 game suspensions. Despite these shorter punishments, they still cost players big money and hurt their teams. Brad Marchand has become the poster boy for these shorter suspensions. The Boston Bruins forward got suspended for 10 games in 2022 for high-sticking Vancouver's Oliver Ekman-Larsson in the face. That suspension cost Marchand nearly $800,000 in lost salary. If Marchand's stick skills were as good at scoring as they are at hitting faces, he'd have twice as many goals. Tom Wilson of the Washington Capitals received a 14-game suspension in 2018 for an illegal check to the head of St. Louis Blues forward Oskar Sundqvist during a preseason game. Wilson has built quite the collection of suspensions. Like some players collect hockey cards, Wilson collects Department of Player Safety videos. Nazem Kadri earned a 12-game suspension in 2021 for a dangerous hit on St. Louis defenseman Justin Falk during the playoffs. What makes this worse is it was his third playoff suspension in 4 years. Some players can't perform under pressure, Kadri can't behave under it. Duncan Keith got 10 games in 2016 for swinging his stick at Minnesota's Charlie Coyle. The Chicago defenseman claimed it was an accident, but the slow-motion replay made it look about as accidental as a wedding proposal. But these shorter suspensions are nothing compared to what's coming next. 20-plus game bans are where things get really serious. Dale Hunter, one-hit revenge, 21-game suspension. If Dale Hunter wasn't a hockey player, he might have been a linebacker with his hitting power. He proved this on the night of April 28, 1993, in a playoff series between his Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders. The Capitals were on the brink of elimination in Game 6, down 5-1 late in the third period. Pierre Turgeon intercepted Hunter's pass and scored to seal the Islanders' victory. What happened next shocked hockey fans everywhere. Turgeon had just scored and was celebrating with his arms raised when Hunter blindsided him with a vicious check, driving his shoulder into Turgeon's back and sending him crashing into the boards. The hit came a full 3 seconds after the goal, an eternity in hockey time. Turgeon crumpled to the ice in pain while chaos erupted around him. The Islanders' bench emptied, and referees struggled to maintain control. The damage was severe. Turgeon suffered a separated shoulder and missed most of the next playoff round against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Islanders managed to advance despite missing their star player who had scored 58 goals that season, but his absence hurt their chances in the long run. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman made an example of Hunter, handing down a 21-game suspension, the longest in league history at that time for an on-ice incident. The punishment carried over to the beginning of the next season and cost Hunter over $150,000 in lost salary. The hit became infamous in hockey history, often replayed as an example of the sport's darkest moments. Fans still debate whether Hunter's frustration over losing justified such a dangerous act of revenge, but the NHL's answer was clear. Absolutely not. Jesse Boulerice. Cross-check to the face, 25 games. Jesse Boulerice wasn't a household name before October 10th, 2007, but he became infamous overnight. During a game between his Philadelphia Flyers and the Vancouver Canucks, Boulerice delivered one of the most brutal cheap shots in modern NHL history. After a whistle during the third period with the Flyers leading 8-2, Boulerice skated across the ice toward Ryan Kesler and, with no warning, cross-checked him directly in the face with his stick. Kesler dropped to the ice instantly as players from both teams swarmed around. The cross-check was so violent that it drew comparisons to Marty McSorley's infamous stick attack years earlier. Amazingly, Kesler wasn't seriously injured. He even returned to the game. But the league didn't take the incident lightly. NHL disciplinarian Colin Campbell suspended Boulerize for 25 games, noting the deliberate, dangerous, and excessive nature of the hit. The suspension tied for the longest ever for an on-ice incident at that time. What made this worse for Boulerize was his history. He had once been suspended for 1 year in junior hockey for a similar stick-swinging incident. The 25-game ban cost him roughly $63,500 in salary, but the bigger cost was to his career. Boulerize played just one more NHL game after serving his suspension, effectively ending his time in the league. Like a bad driver who loses their license, Boulerize lost his privilege to play in the NHL with his reckless behavior. Steve Downey, preseason hit, 20-game suspension. Most rookies try to make a good first impression, but Steve Downey made the wrong kind of history. During a 2007 preseason game between his Philadelphia Flyers and the Ottawa Senators, the rookie forward delivered a hit that would keep him out of the NHL for the first quarter of the season. Downey, trying to make the Flyers roster, skated full speed across the ice at Ottawa's Dean McCammon, who didn't have the puck. Downey left his feet, launching himself upward and driving his shoulder directly into McCammon's head. The Senator forward was knocked unconscious, suffered a concussion, and had to be carried off the ice on a stretcher. The hit was so violent that even Downey's own teammates looked concerned rather than supportive. What made this hit particularly troubling was how deliberate it seemed. Downey traveled nearly 40 feet, targeting a player who wasn't even involved in the play. The NHL responded with a 20-game suspension, extremely rare for a preseason incident, and especially harsh for a player who hadn't even established himself in the league. For a rookie hoping to make his mark, losing 20 games meant missing crucial development time and about $63,000 in salary. While Downey eventually carved out a decent NHL career spanning 434 games, this suspension put him on the league's radar as a player to watch for the wrong reasons. He was later traded 6 times in his career, suggesting teams had concerns about his style of play. Sometimes your reputation follows you like a shadow, and Downey's began with this suspension. But sticks and hits aren't the only things that can get you suspended. Some players took their aggression to another level, crossing lines that even shocked hardened hockey fans. Unlike other suspensions on this list, the next cases weren't just about games lost. They changed careers and lives forever. When the league hands down 30-plus game suspensions, they're sending a message that some actions go beyond the boundaries of an already violent sport. Todd Bertuzzi, career-ending revenge, indefinite suspension. The bad blood between Todd Bertuzzi and Steve Moore had been building for weeks after Moore's hit on Marcus Naslund, Bertuzzi's teammate and the Vancouver Canucks' captain, on February 16, 2004. Naslund suffered a concussion on a hit that the Canucks felt was dirty, but that didn't receive any punishment from the league. When the Colorado Avalanche and Vancouver Canucks met again on March 8, 2004, revenge was in the air. Early in the game, Moore fought Canucks player Matt Kook, seemingly settling the score. But as the game progressed and the Avalanche built a 9-2 lead, tensions rose again. Late in the third period, Bertuzzi followed Moore around the ice, trying to get him to fight. When Moore refused, Bertuzzi took matters into his own hands. Skating behind Moore, Bertuzzi grabbed his jersey, sucker punched him in the back of the head, and drove him face first into the ice. Players piled on top as Moore lay motionless on the ice, blood pooling beneath him. The arena went silent as medical staff rushed to help him. Moore was stretchered off and taken to the hospital with 3 broken vertebrae in his neck, a concussion, and facial cuts. His hockey career was over at age 25. The NHL suspended Bertuzzi indefinitely, which eventually became 20 games including playoffs. He forfeited about $500,000 in salary and missed the 2004 to 2005 season due to the NHL lockout. But the consequences went far beyond hockey. Bertuzzi faced criminal charges in British Columbia, pleading guilty to assault and receiving probation and community service. Moore also filed a $38 million lawsuit that was settled out of court a decade later. This incident changed how the NHL handles revenge plays and led to stricter penalties for targeting players. While Bertuzzi returned to hockey, his career was forever stained by this moment of lost control. Chris Simon, stomping incident, 30-game suspension. Chris Simon was already known as one of hockey's toughest players when he committed one of the sport's most shocking acts of violence on December 15, 2007. As a member of the New York Islanders, Simon had a history of suspensions, including a 25-game ban early earlier that same year. During a game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, Simon and Jarkko Ruutu battled along the boards. After both fell, Simon, while lying on his back, deliberately stomped his skate blade down on Ruutu's ankle. This wasn't a hockey play gone wrong. It was a calculated attempt to injure using one of hockey's most dangerous weapons, a razor-sharp skate blade. The NHL responded with a 30-game suspension, the longest for an on-ice incident at that time. League disciplinarian Colin Campbell called it deliberate and dangerous, noting Simon's lengthy suspension history. The ban cost Simon approximately $292,000 in salary. What made this particularly shocking was that Simon had just returned from his previous 25-game suspension for a stick-swinging incident against Ryan Hallweg. After this suspension, Simon took a leave from hockey to enter the NHL or NHLPA substance abuse program, suggesting deeper issues were affecting his behavior. Simon's story shows how repeated dangerous play eventually results in the harshest punishments hockey has to offer. Like a judge giving a repeat offender the maximum sentence, the NHL had run out of patience for Simon's dangerous acts. Now we reach the most shocking suspensions in NHL history. Incidents so severe they changed the sport forever and left lasting scars on hockey's reputation. Marty McSorley, stick attack, 23 games plus criminal charges. If Marty McSorley wasn't a hockey player, he could have made a career as a bodyguard. For years, he was known as Wayne Gretzky's protector, following the Great One from Edmonton to Los Angeles to ensure no one messed with hockey's biggest star.
But one of the jobs of Marty McSorley is to step up and protect his captain.
McSorley built his 17-year NHL career on being tough, collecting over 3,300 penalty minutes while winning 2 Stanley Cups. But on February 21st, 2000, with just 2.7 seconds left in a game between McSorley's Boston Bruins and the Vancouver Canucks, everything changed. The Bruins were losing 5-2 when McSorley skated up behind Vancouver's Donald Brashear, one of the NHL's toughest fighters. Earlier in the game, Brashear had beaten McSorley in a fight, embarrassing the veteran enforcer. Seeking revenge, McSorley swung his stick like a baseball bat, striking Brashear in the right temple from behind. Brashear had no warning and no chance to protect himself. He fell backward, his helmet flying off, and his head slammed against the ice. He lay unconscious, his body twitching with a seizure as medical staff rushed to help. The arena went silent except for fans screaming for McSorley to be arrested. It was one of the ugliest moments ever seen on NHL ice. The consequences were unprecedented. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman suspended McSorley for the remaining 23 games of the season and made him apply for reinstatement the following year. But the punishment went beyond hockey. McSorley was charged with assault with a weapon in Vancouver court. He was found guilty and sentenced to 18 months probation. While the NHL had seen violence before, this was the first time in modern history that an on-ice incident led to criminal charges. McSorley never played another NHL game. His contract expired during his suspension, and at age 37, his career was effectively over. His legacy was forever changed. From respected tough guy to the face of hockey violence. 20 years later, hockey fans still reference the McSorley incident when discussing the sport's darkest moments. Billy Kotu, referee attack, lifetime ban. While McSorley's attack was shocking, it wasn't hockey's most severe punishment. That dishonor belongs to Billy Kotu, the only player in NHL history to receive a lifetime ban from the league. During Game 4 of the 1927 Stanley Cup Finals between Kotu's Boston Bruins and the Ottawa Senators, tension was high as Boston faced elimination. After the Senators won 3-1 to claim the cup, something in Kotu snapped. The 30-year-old defenseman attacked referee Jerry Laflamme, tackling him to the ice and starting a full-scale brawl. During the chaos, Kotu also punched referee Billy Bell and assaulted multiple Ottawa players. NHL President Frank Calder acted swiftly, banning Kotu from the NHL for life on April 13, 1927. The punishment was especially harsh for its time. In an era when fighting was common and barely penalized, Kotu's actions had to be truly outrageous to warrant a lifetime ban. Kotu's hockey career wasn't entirely over. He played in minor leagues like the CanPro and American Hockey Association for several years. In 1932, he even petitioned the NHL for reinstatement, and the league softened slightly, allowing him to participate in minor leagues affiliated with the NHL. However, they never permitted him to return to the NHL itself. What makes Kotu's case remarkable is that in nearly 100 years since, no other player has received a permanent ban for on-ice actions. Other players have been been suspended indefinitely, but all were eventually allowed to apply for reinstatement. Coutu remains alone in hockey history as the only player told he could never return, a distinction that stands to this day. The stories of McSorley and Coutu represent the absolute limits of what hockey will tolerate. The lines that once crossed can end careers and change lives forever. Besides suspensions, there have also been players who faced indefinite bans from hockey for off-ice issues. While hockey is tough on violence during games, it's even tougher on serious problems away from the rink. Slava Voinov, domestic violence, indefinite suspension. In October 2014, Los Angeles Kings defenseman Slava Voinov was arrested after his wife was treated at a hospital for serious injuries. Police reports described a violent scene at their home, with blood all over the bedroom. The NHL immediately suspended Voinov indefinitely, before his legal case was even settled. After pleading no contest to misdemeanor domestic violence, Voinov spent nearly 2 months in jail and voluntarily returned to Russia rather than face deportation hearings. The Kings terminated his $25 million contract, and the NHL has maintained his suspension even after he applied for reinstatement in 2019, though Voinov continued his career in Russia's KHL, winning Olympic gold in 2018. His NHL career ended at age 24. Other players faced serious legal issues but returned to hockey. Craig McTavish served a year in prison for vehicular homicide after a 1984 drunk driving accident that killed a woman. After his release, he returned to the NHL and played 14 more seasons, even winning a Stanley Cup. Bob Probert faced numerous legal problems, including cocaine possession at the US-Canadian border that led to a suspension and jail time. Despite these issues, Proberty returned to become one of hockey's most famous enforcers. In total, fewer than 10 players have been effectively banned for life from the NHL, making it the rarest punishment in hockey. While second chances exist in the sport, some lines, once crossed, close the door to the NHL forever. These suspensions show how the NHL deals with players who cross the line. From small penalties to career-ending bans, hockey has seen it all. What do you think? Were these punishments fair or too harsh? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this countdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more hockey history. Thanks for watching.